Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bark Night Podcast. I am your host, Patrick Bark, and I have here with me today Paige Lyndaker to talk about horses and Western movie culture. So, Paige, if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Paige Lyndaker. I work with Patrick at Aurelia, now Saffron. And I grew up in the North Country of upstate New York on a beef farm. And I was raised showing horses and breaking horses and throwing hay and mucking stalls. And my ancestry dates back pre Revolutionary War. My family came over from what's now modern day Switzerland, and we settled in upstate New York, and we've never left. And the small hometown that I call home is where my family still is, and we take our heritage, farming heritage, logging heritage, very seriously, and we're very proud to be like part of a working class community, and we love our animals. And I have always been drawn to horses. I think I was born with the horse bug, as my mother calls it, and I've never been able to be without them. It's something that I feel really passionately about, and horses for me are a symbol of what society used to be. You know, 100 years ago, every single person in the United States owned a horse. Uh, and rich people owned automobiles, and now it's completely the opposite. So we'll be addressing that today, when we talk about Western movies and TV shows and horse culture today in the United States and beyond.
Awesome. So, yeah, just like Paige said, we work together, and we've had a lot of conversations about movies and about what shows we're watching and all those sorts of things. So the way this conversation kind of came about is that we were talking about the TV show Yellowstone, and she was filling me in on some of the really just like historical background and some of the competitive background um, that goes into creating a show like that revolves so much around horses, around ranches, around um, just that whole culture. So I mean, that's what the show really is all about the culture. So you have competed in competitions, right?
Yes, I grew up showing horses at fairs and county shows all across New York State. But I also had the opportunity to travel and show American quarter horses. That's the breed association that we showed under, and you know that's one of the things I want to talk about in the episode today. That during Yellowstone, you see really famous horse trainers, famous reiners, famous cutters, and we'll talk about that terminology and the differences between horses that compete in Western shows versus English shows versus, different breeds, paints, Appaloosas, quarter horses, and why they're so different from thoroughbreds and standard breds. And uh, there's different equestrian sports for each different breed. And there is some crossover between Appaloosas, paints, and quarter horses because uh, Appaloosas are descended from Native American horses, and they're the ones with all the pretty spots. Whereas paint horses are the ones that literally look like they've been splashed with paint. And those two breed associations are color breeds. So you're specifically showing under that coat pattern color, whereas quarter horses can be any color. And there are instances where horses are double registered or triple registered under those three organizations. There's also instances where horses are triple or double registered, like appendix quarter horses. So I owned an appendix quarter horse who was a granddaughter of Secretariat, who was a very famous thoroughbred racehorse, perhaps the most famous. It depends on which horse person you ask. But she was, 80% thoroughbred, but she was registered in a quarter horse association. So when it comes to Yellowstone and the reining horses and the cutting horses that they're bringing into that show, they're very famous studs They're very famous trainers and training families. And when the show came out, the equestrian world was like, oh my goodness, Bob Avila is on Yellowstone. He's on TV. You know, other people outside of the horse industry are going to not know who he is, but he's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, very big deal.
They're like, they see me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's there's a lot to break down in what everything that you just said. That, I guess, from a perspective of somebody who doesn't really know anything about any of that, there's a lot of terms being thrown out there. So we figured a good place to kind of start the episode was for almost like a breakdown of like a glossary of like main terms of like, all right, when you say these things, this is what that means when you use these words. So you want to take a moment to kind of go over a few of those, so that as we talk about a few of these things, myself and anybody else listening that isn't a horse person understands what you're talking about.
Absolutely. So in episodes in Yellowstone, they do competitions in the ring. You know, they're doing their sliding stop competition where the horses are running at full speed and then sliding and hitching their back legs and sliding through the sand on command.
Yeah, that was a really interesting scene.
Yeah, and that is what a reining horse does. In competition, they you know, measure how long the horse slides for, how quickly the horse stops without really seeing any cue from the rider. Because most Western horses, now it's not for every Western horse because barrel race horses are not trained this way, but most Western horses that are working cow horses on ranches are spur broke. And that term is used to describe the spurs that are on your boots. When you click your spurs into the side of your horse, the horse does not move forward, it stops. Some trainers, you know, will train their reining horse to stop where they throw their legs out, and that's the motion to start sliding. Whereas other trainers tense up, and then that's when the horse knows when to stop. And it's really, truly just a preference. You know, some trainers will train spur broke, some will not. I had a horse, my most recent show horse, his name was Intentionally Lazy, and he was the son of Lazy Loper, who's a very famous Western pleasure stud in the quarter horse industry, and he was spur broke. So you could ride him with no bridle. And if anything, he preferred that.
And what is a bridle?
A bridle is the headset, the headpieces that go on the horse's head, and they are attached to the bit that's in between the horse's teeth.
Okay.
Inside their mouth. So, when that scene in Yellowstone happens, you'll see that, and if you rewatch the episodes, you'll see like, oh wow, you know, the horse's movements are so fluid. You know, they're only using one hand to steer because the horses are neck reined. So when a rein on one side, like the strings that come up on each side of the bit that give you contact with the horse's mouth, when a horse is trained to neck rein, you only need to use one hand. And when that rein on each side touches the horse's neck, if the horse is touched on this side, it will move this way. And when it's touched on this side, it'll move that way. Not every single horse is trained this way, but the horses in Yellowstone absolutely are. English horses you never see be able to neck rein because you're always riding them with two hands, because they're usually horses that have a lot more what's the word I'm looking for? Energy, like fierce energy. They're the jumpers, they're the hunters, they're like the avengers.
So when you say English horses, do you mean horses in England or horses whose breeds are from England?
Horses that are ridden in an English saddle.
Oh, so neither.
So, yes. And of course, the English riding style originated in England, but the breeds now that they've transferred over, thoroughbreds came from England and now they're in the United States and racing and everything. Any horse that's ridden in an English style very rarely is able to be great at competing in Western. There are horses called all-around horses where they can do Western and English disciplines. It takes a long time to train a horse to do both. None of my horses did both. Wayland was strictly a Western horse, and Willow was strictly an English horse.
All right. So. Any other terms you think it's important for us to know going in?
Yeah, so I wanna go back and I've explained what a reiner is in regards to the television show. They do flying lead changes on command. They do figure eights. They do rollbacks, which is when a horse stops, turns, and then picks up the correct lead in a canter or a lope in Western.
In a what?
Loping is like it's a walk, jog, lope in Western terminology, and it's a walk, trot, canter in English. But they mean the exact same things, but it is a different gait. Sometimes a lope is actually a 4-beat gait if the horse is going slow enough.
Okay, I think I got it, but I also think
no.
I don't.
We're never going to be able to fit this in a couple hours. But I want to go back to explaining the difference between a reiner and a cutter, because a reiner is what we're seeing in Yellowstone when they're doing their sliding stop competition. But then a cutter is a horse that goes into a herd of cattle and cuts a specific cow out of that herd. And they're the ones that are like flying back and forth as the cow is moving, and they're following that cow's body language. And if a cutting horse is trained the way that it's supposed to be, that horse will do it on its own. You don't have to tell it what to do. It's reading that cow's body language, and it's moving on its haunches based on where that cow is going, because it wants that cow out of the herd and knows that it needs to get it for whatever reason, whether that cow needs medication, whether that cow needs to be bred, branded, it needs to be separated for another reason. Say it's going into a different pen or a different pasture, it's being sold. So cutting horses are what I would consider very cow aggressive. Like, they love cattle, but they love pushing around cattle more. And they love their job. And they're actually trained on a flag at first that's on a string against a wall. And that horse is trained to follow that flag, say red or white flag on the wall. And they train their horse to follow. And then they put them in a ring with cattle. And then it's just natural. Because some horses have a really good cow sense and want to herd cattle. I owned a mare named Red Sunny Savannah who was very cow smart. And Willow, my horse that I mentioned earlier, who was the appendix quarter horse, she was deathly afraid of cattle. So, she was practically having a heart attack every time we saw a cow. And that's the difference, I think, between Western bred horses and English bred horses. You can find an English horse that's going to work cattle, but it's rare. The breeding does have to be there. They do have to have some sense of wanting to work and wanting to work really hard, because cutting is not easy and reining is not easy on horses. It's a lot of physical ability, and it's a lot of communication with their rider. Stacy Westfall is a really famous trainer in the Western world and in the English world, but she competed at the American Quarter Horse Congress, which is the largest single breed horse show in the world, and it's held in Columbus, Ohio. And she competed bareback and bridleless and won the reining freestyle at that show and went down in history for it, because it was just her and just her horse, and they could do everything that they do when they do their reining sliding stop competition in Yellowstone without bridle or saddle. So it can you know, if you have
Yeah.
if you have a strong enough connection with your horse and they trust you and you love them and there's this deep mutual bond, truly the sky is the limit.
And how long does it take to train something like that? Because I'd imagine it's a little bit of both. You have to learn for, I'd imagine, a very long time
Yes.
before you even start training one of the horses, and then how long does that take?
Yeah, so in the case of Stacy Westfall, you know, she's a professional trainer.
So probably doing it like literally all her life.
Yes. And she talks in articles and in, you know, biographies about her childhood that she learned how to ride bareback because that's just what they did out in the fields. And to have that connection with a horse is something really special. And when she competed, and of course, when she won, she dedicated that ride to her father, she had just lost, and of course it was standing ovations, and it was such a win, not only for her, but I think it was a win for equestrian sports in general, because it proved that our horses love us and our horses do want to work for us. And it was like when she was riding, it was just a dance.
Yeah.
You know, she was out there having so much fun and their horse was having so much fun, and you know, they just wanted to be together. It didn't matter if the crowd was there or not. And to put that into perspective, horses in the Olympics are around 15 years old at the prime of their life. That's how long they take to train. But dressage is also a very dedicated discipline. It's not something you can train in a year. It's something that takes forever to train, and it takes a soft hand and a dedicated trainer and a very intelligent horse to pull off dressage, or even the horses at the Vienna Riding School, the Lipizan breed that jumps in the air on command. They are an ancient breed, and they take forever to train. And the trainers at the Vienna Riding School keep detailed accounts of the training procedures on every single horse so that they know what horse ancestry, you know, it descends from. So, oh, this horse is just like its great great grandfather, or this horse is just like its grandmother. And then they can track, you know, the lineage and keep track of the genealogy in that breed.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. That breed also was during, you know, the Nazi regime sweeping across Europe and destroying everything in sight, and Hitler's, you know, master plan of developing this, you know, blonde-haired, blue-eyed master race of people. He also had the same notion to do it with horses and have his armies, you know, ride into towns and villages and cities on white stallions. And so one of his heists was to go and start stealing the prized stallions and mares and full crops from the Vienna Riding School. And the Lipizan breed is a very ancient breed of horses that's, you know, like been summered and schooled and trained very distinctly and deliberately by, you know, groups of people across time, and they're very priceless, truly. Their lineage, their bloodlines, the way that they're trained is vastly different from the training styles of any other equestrian discipline. So when those horses were let loose in Europe, as you know, Russia started moving troops in, and of course their armies are hungry, and horses are not only food but companions for war. They were very worried. You know, the trainers from the Vienna Riding School who went with these stallions and mares and tried to keep them together, that the bloodline would dissipate. And Hitler's SS soldiers and you know, the people that he assigned to keep track of these animals, believed that genealogy would be stronger by breeding, fathers to daughters and mothers to sons, and they essentially started destroying the bloodline. And the United States government went in and saved the Lipizzan breed and restored it back to the Vienna Riding School, and we can still, as tourists, go see them perform today in the same way that they would have back during the 1940s ish, 1940,
Yeah.
before World War II ended in 1945. But yeah, the book that I learned all of this knowledge from is called The Perfect Horse, and it's by a author called Elizabeth Letts, named Elizabeth Letts, and she also wrote a book called The $80 Champion, and it's about one of the greatest show jumping horses of all time, who was a horse named Snowman, and he was rescued from a slaughter truck for $80, and he became the greatest show jumping champion of all time, and he was half draft horse.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yep. Yep.
That's really interesting, and and I know that back even in World War One, a lot of people were still fighting on horseback as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the horse world, we always say like a dog is man's best friend, but a horse is man's best slave, because there are so many horses that have went to war alongside men from any dynasty, empire, any country going, and they have been our most trusted friends through it all.
So I guess I guess it's a good point to kind of talk some of the animal safety topics on set with all these competitions, with Yellowstone doing everything that they're doing,
Yep.
with all of these movies with horses in it. Like you've got a ton of movies. Like you got the movie War Horse, you've got Seabiscuit, you've got all these movies with these famous horses. How do they how are these horses trained for to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to on set, to ensure that the people around them aren't interfering with them in a way that kind of obstructs what they're trying to accomplish with the horse?
Yep, definitely.
Make sure nobody gets hurt.
Yep. So actually, last night when I was watching Tombstone, there is a stallion that Kurt Russell's character unloads off of the train, and it's a stallion, and that horse's nostrils in that movie are flaring when he's standing and holding it, which means that horse was worked pretty hard, up to a sweat. It's tired. It's tired enough to stand there and not cause a ruckus.
Yeah.
And so, but that's also a good thing, right? Horses need to be worked. They're working animals. They need their brain to be occupied, especially with all of the lights and the cameras and all the people that are poking and prodding and running around. It's a lot for horses to take in, especially when they've been bred, and evolved as fight or flight animals, mostly flight. So, desensitizing them to parades and people and streamers and fireworks and gunshots all takes time. And the only way to truly desensitize a horse properly is to expose them to everything. It's kind of like human babies, right? In order to socialize your human baby, you need to bring them out and expose them to people and animals and different environments.
Well, like we were just talking about before this with German Shepherds.
Exactly.
We tried to bring our dog Lena in as many crowds as a young puppy as we could, so that she's used to that. We saw it even with the animals at the canines at the public safety show last year.
Yeah. Oh, and they were just laying around, loving it.
Yeah. There were some that we saw that you could tell are super anxious, super high energy.
Yep.
That like, oh, that one might maybe I would have tried to use up a little bit more of that energy before we brought that one here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like that same idea.
Yep. So when trainers are bringing their horses on set and they've been contracted out to say bring 25 horses, and and they need these specific skill sets for the horses to have. You know, this horse needs to jump over a log. This horse needs to be able to run through water. That's not so hard when it comes to Western horses because those horses are usually already doing those things. But horses that are on film, even doing tricks, acting, you know, you think of like the movie Black Beauty, when Black Beauty is running around and opening gates and, you know,
Yeah.
being a little trickster. That horse had to learn all of that by being bonded to its trainer. And horses that are in movies are always, you know, being guided by their trainer, whether that trainer is the one that's actually riding them, you know, in stunts or something.
Yeah.
But it's also, you know, that trainer, that human that they love is behind the camera. They're not far away from their animal. And of course, you know, trainers on film sets don't want their horses to get hurt. Like nobody wants to have to put their horse down.
Right.
So sometimes when there are accidents on sets, you know, a horse breaks a leg, you know, when they're filming a stampede, or, you know, something happens and a horse colics on set. You know, that's really common in the horse world, actually. It's the number one leading cause of death in horses worldwide is colic, the twisted gut that I was talking about earlier. So when PETA comes in and says, oh, a horse colicked on this film set, well, I have many friends who have had to put down horses that have colicked or cast themselves in a stall. And when I say cast, I mean, you know, horses, when they lie down and roll over, they can hitch themselves against the wall of their stall. And if a horse can't get back up, they will die because they're so heavy that their internal organs get too pressurized, and it is debilitating to them, and they pass away.
Oh my God.
So, you know, I have tons and tons of friends who have you know, like cameras in their horses' stalls, and it's like, oh, what's he doing? It's kind of like a baby camera in your nursery. What's the baby doing?
Yeah.
Because they can hurt themselves, and they do, and accidents do happen. You know, horses do accidentally tear through fences. I can't even tell you how many times Waylon escaped my fence at home, and it has absolutely nothing to do with me being a terrible horse owner. It's just he happened to be Houdini and could get out of any situation, run through any fence, you know. It doesn't matter how electrified it was. All of a sudden you'd see him wandering around the lawn. There goes Waylon, you know.
Yeah.
You can't control every scenario that's going to happen. And so, especially in the original Westerns, you know, before CGI, all of those stunts were real, you know, and they were done by stunt riders and stunt horses. And when, you know, they simulate stampedes and a whole herd of cattle is running, well, that herd of cattle actually is scared in real life, you know, or they're being made to run somewhere, and because they have such a herd mentality, you know, if they start actually getting scared or something sets them off, you know, it's a hard group to control, a stampeding herd. So you see that in a lot of Western films, like, oh, you know, somebody died in a stampede. Well, yeah, of course they did. You know, when a thousand head herd of cattle is running, they're not worried about who they're gonna harm.
Yeah.
They're just in it for survival instinct.
So I guess I don't think I've heard that many cases, but is it common for people to get hurt doing things like that, doing like shooting stampedes and things?
So
of that sort?
So it isn't anymore because it's so heavily regulated now.
Yeah.
But there still are accidents that happen on sets. You know, you can't control every situation. Even when they were shooting Lord of the Rings, for instance, PETA came in and a few horses passed away on set, and it was a huge deal.
How?
They were injured when they were doing like the battle charges.
Oh.
So when all of the horses, the cavalry was coming in and charging, horses were injured there and had to be put down, whether it was broken pastern bones or coffin bones in their legs. horses can't unfortunately survive any injury, any bone injury to the leg. And they've tried to save thoroughbreds who have broken their legs on the track. Barbosa, I believe, is the name of one of the racehorses that they tried to, to put him in a pool and walk him and see if they could save his life. And even with all of the money that, his owners had, it still didn't work.
Is that because of that same idea that if a if if they don't have the use of all three of their legs or all four of their legs, then they can't really stand, and if they end up
and their
down,
body their body mass is too heavy for the legs that they stand on. So if anything happens to those legs, it's impossible to cure and heal. You will see horses, they'll get like, tendon injuries, they'll have, like muscle aches and sores. Some, horses will like get caught on their legs, like, God forbid they run through barbed wire fences or any, any kind of injury like that. Those can be healed over time, but tendon injuries are still very serious, and they take what we call stall rest. So, hardly any pasture turnout, and they're mostly just standing and eating and healing and going about their day inside the barn.
All right. Well, I had no idea.
Yeah. Horses routinely, too, will go out and tear in pastures and run around and go crazy and play, and they'll come back into the barn lame. And when I say lame, I mean like limping.
And what happens then?
You just put them on stall rest, give them maybe some bute, some painkiller, and hope that they, come out of it. But I've watched my own horses run around in our pastures and fields and fall down on their own. So it can happen. Horses do fall. Horses do fall without their riders. They do wipe out, like clear off their own feet. It's alarming to see an animal that large just completely, lose their balance. But it does happen.
It's not. I guess it's not. It's not that surprising. Just think of it like with our dog Lena. Like she's jumped to and from. She's a strong dog and she's in good shape, but she has like sprained her leg jumping to and from the couch before, and not she's actually done that like 3 times before, or like she just run because German shepherds they're throwing their body everywhere all the time, and she's like literally like hurt herself before by just running into the coffee table. Yep. So yeah, I mean like big animals, I guess it I guess like now that you mention it, it doesn't surprise me that much that like they're just another type of animal.
Yep. Horses fall down too. So yeah, that's truly like horses in a nutshell when it comes to their behaviors and how they train and their bonds with humans. And really, it doesn't really matter which breed of horse you're dealing with. They're all the same on the inside. Whether they're built and bred for jumping or they're built and bred for, sorting cows and cutting cows. They always, perform for their humans.
Yeah.
In the same way that show dogs perform for their humans. They love to work and they love to be around people. And I think it would be an amazing experience to be on a film set with a set of horses that are bonded to me, because it would be so interesting to see what their reactions are and what they think, because they are very highly intelligent animals.
Yeah.
I know horses who are smarter than some humans I know, and I would just love to see their reaction to things, because they do look at you like, is this for real, lady? Or I'm not doing that. Are you crazy?
You hang out with this dummy? Like,
Yeah. Like, can we leave now? I'm bored.
yeah. Well, and so, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to when before we had done this episode, when we were talking about it, there was two different movies. I was like, I told you should watch. The first one was Nope,
Mm-hmm.
and then I figured out you hadn't watched Tombstone yet, so that was I was like, no, forget about Nope. Watch
Yep.
Tombstone because that's like one of the best westerns ever. But Nope specifically, I wanted you to watch because like so even if you should watch it eventually because what's interesting about it is the title characters, not the title characters but the main characters, are a family that has owned horses since like the silent film era. And there's a scene where one of the guys has the horse on set and he's standing by the horse the entire time waiting for them to be ready for this commercial, and they're going back and forth about all these different things and the movie stars being a pain, and he keeps telling them like they got to keep moving, like you've got to get this rolling because like the horse is done. And like then like when they finally start, like I forget exactly what it is that happened, but I think like he told the person to stop looking the horse in the eyes or something,
Mm-hmm.
because the horse didn't like that. And like so it's just kind of like I thought some of the stuff that happened there was interesting, and I hadn't seen it before, and I would love to get your take on it when you
Mm-hmm.
do get to see that. But like it was an interesting like behind the scenes look
Yeah,
at how
definitely.
horses are handled in Hollywood.
Yep. And, every horse is different, right? Every horse has a different personality in the same way that humans do. And they
Yeah.
all have their own little quirks. So, there are horses that don't like to be looked in the eye. Some of them, if you weren't looking them in the eye, they'd think that you weren't the alpha anymore and you weren't in charge because, handling a 1,500-pound animal that could kill you,
Yeah.
there has to be some mutual trust and love there, in order to keep it safe, and because horseback riding in general is the most dangerous sport in the world.
Yeah,
So
I know a lot of people who've gotten hurt doing
yeah,
it. So
because I think people sometimes don't go into it with the knowledge that they need to succeed when it comes to reading the body language of horses or how to ride. Everyone always used to joke when I was younger, oh, you just sit there. Go try and ride a horse because you don't just sit there. You are working every muscle, and every ounce of your brain to connect and have that bond with your horse. And, you go into a show ring and some of that, it gets so much more heightened. There's the nerves, the horse could be scared, there's new scents and smells and sounds. And working through that, with an animal is something really powerful.
yeah.
It builds character because it doesn't always work out. you know, like I think back to when I used to show horses when I was younger and didn't really know what I was doing, and I sometimes I do wonder like, wow, that could have ended badly, or
Yeah.
man, you have to lose a lot to appreciate when you win. And you're not going to win every time you step into a ring. You're not going to win every ride. Some rides are going to be absolute brutal fighting, it seems, with your horse. You want them to do something and you're asking them in a way that they can't understand.
Yeah.
And it's breaching that like non-language communication and having patience, because if your horse isn't doing what you want them to do, you're not asking them the right way.
Right.
And it really helped me bond, with my horses, as I was a teenager, and it helped raise me, I think, into the woman that I became, because I was, you know, I was so focused on showing and riding horses and doing that at home that I think I became a better communicator and a more empathetic person by being around so many animals when I was younger.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. It built character
Yeah.
in so many ways, and it truly, when I have my own children someday, the first thing I'm getting them is horses, because it was so formative to my, teenage teenage years and beyond.
Yeah, and I think that just owning animals in general tends to get people to it builds a certain type of social behavior in people,
Mm-hmm.
and having so not to compare it again to dogs, but that's what I know.
Mm-hmm.
Like having any sort of animal, like a dog, like a horse, even having chickens or anything like that, like it gives you responsibilities too.
Yep.
You have certain training, you have certain chores, certain things that you need to do, that I think, having children or teenagers have responsibilities like that is a great start moving them into the real world.
Yeah, and it teaches them kindness toward something that only depends on them.
Yeah.
And I think if, you know, these generations that come after us raise animals in their homes, we're going to create a world of empaths.
Yeah.
And I truly think that that's what the world needs more of. We need more people who are empathetic human beings and kind toward those that are less fortunate, can't fend for themselves,
Yeah.
are innocents. And I've raised every single animal you can imagine. I've shown oxen. I've I've hatched more chickens than probably anybody I know. But yeah, having empathy for animals is the key. And horses was that for me more than any other animal. But I've had my own German Shepherd, Zeus and King. I've raised rabbits, guinea pigs, um, everything, pigs, goats.
Well, everybody's talking right now with the price of eggs right now. It's a great time to have chickens.
It is, yep. And they are fun. If anyone is planning on buying chickens, I recommend Rhode Island Red Hens. They're big, they're sweet, and they lay amazing eggs. Way Leghorns too.
Nice.
You're welcome.
I'll keep that in mind. Okay, so the next topic I wanted to talk about is Western stars, movies, and culture. So, first off, let's talk about Yellowstone a little bit more, because I know you had some thoughts on a couple things with that.
Yeah, definitely. So, Yellowstone, when I think about Western film culture, TV culture, harkening back to Gunsmoke and Bonanza, I see and I view Yellowstone more as perhaps the first Western mafia type TV show or movie,
Yeah.
but more mafia esque. Because there is so much lawlessness, so much killing, um, and truly, like, the entire storyline revolves around them fighting, them trying to protect their land, them, uh, you know, kind of buying the police department and putting their own sons and farm hands in the police department to make sure that like they can get away with all of this.
Yeah.
To me, it's a touch far-fetched, and they could tone it down a little bit. I realize that's what like drew people into the first couple of seasons of Yellowstone. Everybody loved Beth Dutton, and she goes off off the cuff, and she's one of those characters that is very, in many ways, very hyper masculine, and people celebrate her in that show for that. But from my perspective and where I'm sitting as a woman in America, when we as women are hyper masculine or step into our power in that way and are promiscuous and running around naked and being bosses at work, we aren't celebrated.
Yeah.
We're pushed down in society. So it's interesting to me to see, the viewership of Yellowstone loves her and loves that she swears and she loves sex and she's a badass at work. But from where I'm sitting, that's not what society values in women.
Yeah.
When you're that in real life, people look down on you and judge you and want to silence you. And she does, many people do try to silence her in that show, and she always comes back even worse than she was before. She comes back, she's scarred. Somebody tried to bomb her office and she's not giving up, which I appreciate so much. But in real life, if my office got bombed, I think I would, feel like I needed to tone it down. And for me, I love her character and I love what she represents. And I hope that, women who are watching that TV show think to themselves, we can be a Beth Dutton. We can be financial powerhouses. We can have it all. Uh, you're going to create enemies along the way, uh, perhaps more than men do. Men can rise to power, and no one's going to probably bomb their office.
Yeah, right.
But she never takes no for an answer, and she does protect her family in ways that is very honorable. But then, of course, they do kill a lot of people too and take them to the train station.
Yeah. So I agree with pretty much everything you just said. What's interesting is when I pitch Yellowstone to people, I pitch it as it's either Sons of Anarchy or The Sopranos in the West. That's how I pitch it to people.
Yes.
Because that's what it is. It's a crime drama. It's all about. I think it reminds me more of Sons of Anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Which I loved, but it's that thing of like it's a family, and we're trying to be successful together in this arena. In
Mm-hmm.
that one, it's a motorcycle club. Here, it's a ranch. Sopranos, it's the mob.
Yep.
So it's like that. It's that thought, and they're gonna do anything they have to do to keep what they have going. And at the same time, so they're killing people. They're and interestingly, in all these examples, there's that whole thought of how far are we going to push this? Are we pushing too far in this other direction? And I think so. In like Sons of Anarchy, the main character, Jax, that's his struggle. The entire show is how far in this direction do I go? I would like to pull us out of the crime. And so he's trying to pull them out of the crime, but he keeps getting pulled back into it and making it worse more and more towards the end of the show. That seems to be happening with, I'm so bad with the names on Yellowstone, but the one son who's married to the Native American girl, he seems to have replaced that role where he's at the beginning of the show not even living on the ranch. He doesn't live there. He doesn't work there. He wants nothing to do with them. And he gets pulled back in, and he wants to change things, but he's not sure what to change. And he keeps, like you said, taking people to the train station and getting involved in these acts that are like he's trying to do it the right way, but he is breaking the law while he's doing it. So it reminds me of Sons of Anarchy a lot.
Yeah, and it eats away at him too. And I would even say I compare it also with Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, I love Peaky
because
Blinders.
They're such a close family unit, and their culture as Romany Gypsies is so fascinating. It's not in any way similar to Western, Montana, like country culture, but it's definitive.
Yeah.
And they're trying to preserve their way of life in such a lasting way that they're willing to kill for it, and they're willing to defend their territory to the death.
Yeah.
And many of them lose their lives. They do fight internally. They have family squabbles that are not rectified and sorted out in any way. And they lose a lot of very prominent family members because of their turf wars and mafia wars stretching to Boston and New York City and beyond through that TV show. but they're survivors. They're not going to give up their way of life. They're not going to give up being the Peaky Blinders. And I think as Yellowstone progresses, we're going to see that the Duttons are not going to give up their way of life. They're going to fight to the death for it. And, maybe that means that they all eventually die. Like the Duttons can be no more. Even in modern America, family farms that large are becoming extremely hard to maintain and keep because there's so many people that want to develop the land. People are coming in and want to do sky rises and put up casinos and build ski resorts and bring industry into places that have remained, for lack of a better word, wild. And we are seeing that in Yellowstone as they're fighting to keep the entire farm and land as one unit. The reality is that it can't happen without money, and that's why they bring in the reining and cutting horses and start going to competitions, because they're trying to wrestle up money for the ranch.
Yeah.
Because they need to be able to pay their property taxes and all of the bills that come with a huge home like that and a huge operation like that. And when you see the reining horses come into the ring, they're just dollar signs. Can this one win at a fraternity? Is this one going to be able to be a stud at some point?
Yeah.
How much money can this horse bring in? And they're talking, oh, in 3 years, maybe this one, or maybe this is the ringer for us. Bringing in a ringer in the show pen means that you're bringing in a horse that's really never been shown before, but is going to end up, really doing well and winning a lot of money, and maybe pushing out competition that's been working hard for years. When you bring a ringer in, you're going to win above them.
Yeah.
With little to no, what's the word I'm looking for? Little to no effort on your part. You're just buying the horses in, hiring trainers, going to the shows, winning, taking the cash, and selling the horses to the highest bidder.
One thing I wanted to say is that I think is interesting about the prequels to Yellowstone is that 1883 is essentially the Oregon Trail.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
Yep.
And then 1923, the one that comes after that, is once they're on their land and they're starting to get into everything. Watching these two prequels, you see how far the Dutton family has come from what it originally was.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're generally very good people, but now they're not good people. Like Kevin Costner is not a good guy.
No.
Like he's like I would venture to say he might be the villain of the show. Like they don't really frame him that way, but like it kind of seems like by the end of the show maybe you will see that. That like
yes.
that earlier on, they make a point at the end of 1883 to point out that when they got that land, they promised they were going to return it to those Native Americans in whatever it was, so many generations. Like in so many generations, we expect this much of the land to be returned to us, and then that never happened, obviously. And there's obviously no plan to let it happen either. But I think that's interesting that they put that in there because they seem to be telling these intertwined Native American stories as you go through as well.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if maybe by the end of the show, that's where it ends up. That the Duttons, over time, became greedy, became almost the villains of their own story.
Yep.
And by the end of it, the Native Americans end up with the land back. And we haven't quite connected those dots of all of the different Native American characters throughout this, but the son is married to a Native American, and they have a son together. And there's a good chance that son or a future child of theirs will end up with this land by the end.
Yes.
You've seen further ahead than me, so if for all I know, the son and the wife are dead by this point. But so don't spoil it if they are, and maybe I'm completely wrong. But I think that could be where they're headed. Is they've placed these little pieces through where it's like they promised this land back, they never did. They got this land given to them. They didn't take
Mm-hmm.
it. You know,
Yep.
they didn't properly earn it. It got given to them by the Native Americans, and now they are literally fighting the Native Americans to keep this land. So I think that's an interesting parallel that they tell. Another thing that happened in the most recent episode of 1923 is Harrison Ford talking about how the reason there he's so passionate about this land is because if you he's like picture Chicago. Have you ever wondered now picture Chicago without the city there? He's like, that's what we have right now, and that's what I'm fighting for. Is for somebody not to turn this into the next Chicago.
Mm.
And so, to me, that almost seems like that is also what this entire show is about. You know, is about all it's about preserving land, preserving this American way of life that has been almost like captured. You know,
Absolutely.
so
And
it's
and keeping the West wild.
yeah,
Keeping that natural environment unpolluted and unpopulated. And I agree 100% that Kevin Costner and the Duttons in general are the villains in Yellowstone because they're so engrossed in the idea that they are the rightful owners of their land when we're all here on borrowed time.
yeah,
Like, we do not own anything. And uh, to have stolen so much of our country from Native Americans and to not have ever apologized to them for that, as European immigrants, is blasphemous at this point. And truly, it astonishes me even to this day that there are families that own ridiculous amounts of land in the United States and who who should not who should be more grateful for how much land they do own that's truly soaked in the blood of our indigenous population.
yeah.
And I know that seems like harsh words to say, but it's 100% the truth.
No, it is.
We came here, stole everything from them, overpopulated our country, have polluted everything, and have never once given them at least the satisfaction of saying sorry.
And I feel like that's like in a backdoor way, almost what he's trying to tell the creator of this show.
Exactly, because the son has fallen in love with a Native American woman. His son is Native American. And it doesn't matter, you know, the Duttons are saving their land to give it willingly to a Native American grandchild. So it's come so full circle. It's like, well, you won't give it back to the Native American tribe of which it rightfully belongs, but you'll give it to your grandson who belongs to that Native American tribe
Yeah.
from which it rightfully belongs.
Yeah.
So, like, you love him and cherish him. Of course you do. He's your grandchild. But at the same time, it's like you should be respecting who he is, where he comes from.
Yeah.
He's a symbol of true survival. You know, when you think about like the Trail of Tears and the Battle at Wounded Knee and mass genocide in the United States, he's a symbol of indigenous culture surviving. And so if the Dutton Ranch goes to him, well, great, so be it.
Yeah.
It's it's 100 years too late.
Yeah, and it seems like with those little breadcrumbs that he's laid in the prequels, it seems like that's where they're headed with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's probably good, you know, because like he seems like the purest part of the family too. Like right now, he's pure in that, you know, like the daughter, the father, even the lawyer's son, like all of them are terribly tainted in like they've done terrible things,
Mm-hmm.
and they just don't seem to be good people. And like, you know, and that was part of the thing with the daughter saying about the son. I keep saying the daughter and the son and the brother because I don't remember anybody's name. I don't
The
know
Duttons,
why.
the Duttons.
Yeah, Kevin Costner, the Duttons. That's what I remember. I don't know why. I've watched so many episodes and
I
I can't
know.
remember any of their names. But the daughter says that she's like you should take your husband and leave this place because he's good right now,
Mm-hmm.
and this place is going to ruin him,
Yeah.
just like it ruined her, just like it ruined her father, and their mother, who was good, died.
Yep.
So like she was the good that was holding them together, and that the daughter basically says like your family unit, the three of you are good right now, and I'm like I don't want this place to ruin you.
Mm-hmm.
And if even you take one of them out of that equation of three people, I feel like that would they would go down the same path, you know, as the rest of the family has.
Oh, absolutely. And the little boy gets kidnapped.
Yeah,
He
I made it
kills
past that part.
someone.
I haven't made
And
it to that part.
oh, okay. Lips are sealed.
I
But
we saw
but
it coming.
so
Yep. Oh,
you
yeah.
do see it. It's writing on the wall, right? If he stays, how could you stay amongst the Dutton family and not be a victim to murder and kidnapping
Yeah.
and being shot at or stalked or threatened in some way? And he unfortunately sees it at such a young age and is scarred for life because of it. And uh, you see like his healing process, and he starts going through post traumatic stress
And not a single person in that family is prepared to heal him through that. None
no
of them has a healthy way to heal.
no because they're all broken people.
Yeah.
They all need therapy.
Yeah.
The Duttons. They all need therapy, and they all have the money to go to therapy and don't go.
Yeah.
No excuses.
Yeah, it's so it's a good show. I'm glad I started watching it, and I think that that I think that's where the show is headed.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think it's wonderful that it is, because when you look at Western film history, the way that Indigenous rights and race are represented and portrayed on film within, John Wayne's movies, Clint Eastwood's movies, and beyond, uh, it's very problematic.
Yeah.
They're constantly portraying Native Americans as rapists and killers and kidnappers and heathens and dirty and sinful, unchristian, like everything that at that time society hated and
Yeah.
resented. They take the Native American and say these Indians are horrible people and you should be afraid of them and you should hate them and vilify them. And uh we know now today that Native American tribes across the West were just trying to reclaim what was theirs and have the white population respect them.
Yeah.
And not colonize them so brutally, and obviously history speaks for itself.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I liked about 1883 is that it showed kind of it showed like all the different ways, all the different complexities of the Native American culture in relation to the Oregon Trail. Like you're gonna find people that are friends with you. You're gonna find people that you fall in love with. You're going to find people that you can trade with, and you're going to find people that will probably kill you. Just like any other culture, there
Mhm.
are those complexities to it.
Yep.
And and then they also make a point in explaining for the in layman's terms for those out there, like why all these things are there, and
Mm-hmm.
why these complexities are there and how they compare to this culture. And I think that the mutual respect between the main characters and the Native Americans and the relationships that they establish, I think all of those were done very well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. And you can't say the same for the majority of Western movies.
No, and so I love westerns. They're one of my favorite types of movies, but watching back through them over time, you do find so many problematic things.
Yes.
It's some of them, and it was a different, like, what can you say? It was a different time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we were watching uh Fistful of Dollars the other day, and Sarah asked me, like, are any of these characters actually Mexican? And I was like, I guarantee they're not, because this was
Mm-hmm.
filmed in Italy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't think in what was it, was it the 40s or the 60s? It was the 60s. So I think it was made in like 1964, and like I can't imagine there were any Native Americans or any Mexican people in Italy at the time, because everything, and if there were, they certainly weren't in the acting business, simply because things were so segregated back then
Mm-hmm.
that there was, like, even if somebody wanted to, zero opportunity. It's just not going to happen because of the way business, because of the way Hollywood, because of the way all of these are set up. It was just extremely segregated at the time.
Yeah, definitely. And their ideology was, why hire a Mexican? Why hire a Native American when we can just hire a white man and make him look indigenous?
Yeah.
Which is even more problematic now
Yeah.
that we understand that it's a variation of blackface,
And
essentially.
I mean, like, you brought up John Wayne before. There was the whole thing with, like, John Wayne being dressed up as Genghis Khan in the one movie
Mm-hmm.
of his, and it's just like, that is something like
Oh no!
no.
Do not do
What is interesting about, so, like, I want to talk about spaghetti westerns for a second, just because I was just talking about Fistful of Dollars. So what's interesting though about spaghetti westerns is that, so when Clint Eastwood went over there for, and I'm explaining this just as much for the audience as you probably know this already,
Mm-hmm.
but when Clint Eastwood went over to Italy to film all these movies, he didn't speak Italian, and most of the cast and crew didn't speak English. So there was a translator that was there working with Clint Eastwood to work with Sergio Leone while he was making these movies, because they couldn't actually communicate together.
Wow.
And so, like, when you watch the movie, and the reason this topic came up while we were watching it was because you notice that everybody in that movie is dubbed. So if you watch it
Mm,
carefully, you can tell nobody's speaking English, and there's just voiceovers over every single
no
character that
kidding.
isn't Clint Eastwood.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll have
because
to
none of
rewatch
them
now.
spoke English, and they just put English voices over it when it got back here. And so eventually, Clint Eastwood started to learn Italian, and he started to. I think he took some classes, and kind of learned from communicating with people that way. And eventually, they made three movies together. Eventually, they were able to start communicating, but that's how it was for a good while of that production. Is that it was literally everybody speaking Italian. So when they say something to Clint Eastwood, they don't know what he's saying back, and he doesn't know what they just said to him. They're just reading a script.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's what's like really interesting to me about the spaghetti westerns in general, is that, like, they're something that almost shouldn't have been successful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're like this. The odds are obviously stacked against them, but like that genre ran off Clint Eastwood's energy for so long, for all of those movies, and he really did so well in all of them. But it's all running off him.
Mm-hmm.
Without him, those aren't successful.
Yeah.
But and Ennio Morricone did the music for the Fistful of Dollars, for a few dollars more, and the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and his music in those three movies sets him on a whole another level as well because the music is so good. And I mean, finishing The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly with The Ecstasy of Gold, you know that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finishing with that song is like, it's like the pinnacle of one of the most like iconic scenes, scores out there, and it's been used in so many things since. But yeah, that's my spaghetti western soapbox.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, Clint Eastwood, he's a god when it comes to Western film, perhaps even more so than John Wayne, because I think he really came in and redefined the genre
Yeah,
and started playing characters that, were not as white savior as John Wayne came across. Uh, Clint Eastwood, even in the Outlaw Josie Wales, he's no savior. He's trying to do right by the people around him, but he's not a good guy.
yeah,
And when you watch that film, you're rooting for him. You're like, oh wow, okay, he's going to do the right thing. Where when in the past he did not.
yeah,
He wouldn't be an outlaw. If he had.
yeah. Have you seen Unforgiven?
Mm-hmm.
So that I think is like, it's the pinnacle of all of those
Yeah.
because by that point, Clint Eastwood knows westerns better than anybody by that point in his career. And he actually purchased the rights to that story years and years before.
Yep.
But he wanted to wait until he aged into the role. And I'm pretty sure that movie won an Oscar. But like, it is so good, especially in the fact that like, it's challenging all of those tropes that he helped establish.
Mm-hmm.
He's going in purposefully making decisions that go against everything he's established. And it's just done in such a beautiful way too.
I would say The Unforgiven is perhaps the greatest Western Clint Eastwood has made of all time. Um, and it's absolutely in the top 5 best Westerns of all time, of any, actor, leading actor.
Yeah.
Unforgiven truly is a masterpiece.
It is. And the cast is great, especially in that Gene Hackman in it. He is the most untraditional bad guy. Because like, what I think is interesting about it is you could watch that movie and you could say it doesn't have a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could say that everybody's bad. Or you could like you can watch it in a way where like literally every character in that movie is like gray.
Mm-hmm.
They're morally gray. And that's what I think makes it so interesting is that like, especially Gene Hackman's character is he's almost a good guy that just so happens to like meet this crossroads with Clint Eastwood's character.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And I think what's so fascinating about that trope, morally gray characters, is that I think in order to survive in the West back in those days, you became morally gray.
Yeah.
There was no way that you could stay, your perfect Christian self and not commit any obscenities, murder, fraud, theft. You had to be able to protect yourself. And, women started shooting guns and women started, riding horses with one leg on each side, no side saddle, which would have been unheard of back, just probably a couple decades before.
Yeah.
That freedom, freedom in dress, freedom in speech, and doing what you want, when you want, how you want, with who you want. That was like the Western ideal, and that's why so many people went out west, because it was, what they considered to be the final frontier at the time. Like,
Yeah.
oh, new opportunities, gold was, surging.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted to, stake their claim on the West. Well, yeah, stake your claim on the West, but try to keep it then. And I think that it circles us back to the significantly morally gray Dutton family. Obviously, over 100 years, uh, they they lose their sense of humanity
Yeah.
completely, and perhaps that's what Taylor Sheridan, the creator of Yellowstone, is trying to say. When you have such power over the land, and you feel such an entitlement to the land that you're sitting on, do you really deserve it? No, the answer is no.
You know, I just thought of something. Taylor Sheridan was in Sons of Anarchy. He
Oh,
plays the
really?
sheriff in like the first 2 seasons.
Oh my gosh. It's been a while since I watched Sons of Anarchy. Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Taylor Sheridan also plays, guest roles in Yellowstone too, but he's also like an AQHA, which stands for American Quartermaster Association, lifetime member. He's had he's held achievement awards with the association, and he rides reining horses in real life and has his own ranch and everything. So
Oh,
he's
that's
like a
cool.
real life cowboy,
Yeah, so
which
he
is
gets
why
it.
he's so ingrained in the industry, and it's why so many trainers and so many really really famous horses were able to come up to the Yellowstone Ranch and film, because he is a part of the industry.
Have you seen Wind River?
you know, it doesn't ring a bell, but who is the lead in it?
It's Elizabeth Olsen and Jeremy Renner. It's like it's kind of like a
Oh,
detective
oh, okay.
story.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about now. Yeah,
So
it's more modern, contemporary.
yeah, Taylor Sheridan directed and wrote that as well.
Oh,
So that's one that's worth checking out.
Yeah, I'll
I
have
really
to
like
add
that
that to
out of
my
all the
list.
ones he's done.
Yep, I think Elizabeth Olsen is a great actress.
Yeah, she's good.
And
I like her
Jeremy
a lot.
Renner. Yep, I like those two together.
Yeah. Let's finish off with what your favorite classic westerns are and what your favorite modern westerns are.
I think for me, my favorite classic western that I think is like the epitome of western film is Stagecoach with John Wayne. But I also absolutely love, the early silent western films, and the original short films with Buffalo Bill and Annie Oakley. I think those are really fascinating to see how far we've come, and the culture, and how Western culture created celebrities out of people.
Yeah.
Annie Oakley and her sharpshooting skills, and when I watched Tombstone last night, Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp, and all of these other famous people, they've become symbols of the West. And I do sometimes wonder if they, when they were alive, realized just how famous they were becoming when they were, pioneering, and trying to eke out a living in ways that no one else ever had. So I think for me, of course, I have to go with the John Wayne, but for modern movies, um, I really love, a lot of westerns that actually aren't even set in the United States. I love The Man from Snowy River. I think that's just such a magnificent film, and I love the amazing shots that they get, with the horses running over the mountaintops and everything, that before CGI. I mean, that's all real stunt work. That's all true riding. Like, he is a fantastic horseman. I love that movie. And I would say Unforgiven by Clint Eastwood has to be on that list, and The Outlaw Josie Wales. So yeah, I wrote an entire research paper when I was in college about the use of water and crossing water, and what water symbolizes to populations in the West. Crossing rivers with stagecoaches and horses and children, and trying to keep all of your furniture with you was so incredibly dangerous. And as populations on the trails kept going west, it was river after river after river after river. And so in 1883, you see, as they're going north, oh my goodness, here comes another river. Who are we going to lose this time?
Yeah.
What are we going to have to set on the banks of the shore and leave behind. You're slowly losing your identity as you go and building a new identity, once you land wherever you're going to land. And so, yeah, Outlaw Josie Wales has to be on that list for sure. And for modern westerns, for me, obviously I have to put True Grit on the list, and the new True Grit. Of course, the old True Grit is fantastic as well, but I really enjoyed the new one. And I love 310 to Yuma. And I do really like the Western comedies, A Million Ways to Die in the West and stuff. I think those are uh, a good jolt of fun.
Yeah.
They bring a different element to the Western genre than just, constant killing, rape, and conquering of indigenous peoples. So I think for me, those have to be like ones that I would continue to watch over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. I do love the Outlaw Josie Wales. It's that is definitely one of my favorite ones. And like even like the cover artwork for that one
Mm-hmm.
is like it's super iconic. True Grit is well. I guess I'll give mine, and then we can discuss because we got a little bit of a holdover on each of ours. So my favorite classic western. So I love the Clint Eastwood movies. His movies are all almost like that's pretty much my list. The Clint Eastwood movies. So the Outlaw Josie Wales is awesome. I love the Man with No Name trilogy, or whatever you
Mm-hmm.
want to call it, the Dollars trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer the Man with No Name trilogy, but like a lot of people call it different things. I love that trilogy. I think it's and like what's interesting about it is it wasn't shot to be a trilogy, but it's that's what it went down as in history.
Mm-hmm.
um what's interesting is like you've got all the characters, like there's each one has its own unique story that just so happens to have Clint Eastwood's character there passing through the whole thing. And it's also got like each one has its own spin on the whole idea too, and like so the bad guy in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is Lee Van Cleef.
Mm-hmm.
He's also the other good guy in For a Few Dollars More, and his character is so interesting in that movie. In that, like the history that they're trying to tell without really telling the history of his character.
Mm-hmm.
With everything with his daughter's picture and the medallion that he's carrying around with him, like everything and the all of the stories they're trying to tell, like revolving around the money that's involved in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
But the third one, I mean, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, is on another level. It's so good. Everything
Yeah.
that they involve with like the Civil War era and how they involve the soldiers in the story. I mean, this movie's 3 hours long. It's as epic as a western's going to be in that area. I do love the classics, like Magnificent Seven, though.
Oh, yep. Yep.
That's a great one.
Yeah, that's
I like
definitely worth
Shane
mentioning.
too. Shane, I was always a big fan of. Have you seen Shane?
I don't think so.
You should check that one out. I think you'd like it. But yeah, I love those movies. I like Pale Rider too a lot.
Oh, Pale Rider. Yep.
Pale Rider's very good, but it has that like that troubling scene in it where like there's like the woman that like disrespects Clint Eastwood's character, and then he like beats her and rapes her, and
Mm-hmm.
like that one scene I feel like is like it's like so out of place,
Yeah.
and it's like questionable like as to like why it's even there in the first place. Like, is it realistic? Probably, but does it need to be there? Like
Mm-hmm.
what is it adding? And why is your protagonist the one doing this? Is it just to show that like but like but on top of that, like it does tell like almost does turn his character, like the whole movie, his character is almost like supernatural,
Mm-hmm.
in the way of how he does everything. Like it almost seems like he comes into this town, just causes complete havoc, and does some evil things, but does others that are good for the people there, and then just like it kind of like leaves, and it's the way that whole story goes down is it's a very interestingly told story, you know.
Definitely. And it brings up a great point about rape in westerns. When I was watching Tombstone last night, within the first 10 minutes, they rape a bride on her wedding day and kill her husband to be. And it sets the tone for just how evil this band of, heathens is.
Yeah.
And then later in the film you see them talking in Latin to each other, so you understand these are very well educated white men from deep south, and they know that they're powerful, and they're going to um, act out their power whenever and wherever they want to, and on whoever they want to. And it is interesting to see that it opened in that way, because it sets the tone for like the true evil nature of the men and how they become so corrupted. How could you come from being completely fluent in Latin to just having no sense of morality whatsoever,
Yeah.
but also quoting Bible quotes, quoting Revelations and quoting all of these other different things about religion, and trying to be a good man. It really truly showed me anyway that the hypocrisy of Christianity is generations deep. It's not just in our generation, the hypocrisy of Christianity. It's something that's been ingrained in that religious sect for a really long time.
What's interesting too is like, so I believe that scene is there because they're setting the stage for who those people are. So they're going to show them being funny. They're going to show them being friends. They're going to show a lot of different aspects of them through the movie. But they want to establish right off the bat that these guys are evil. And that's really interesting, that pointing out the fact that, like, because they probably were very well educated too. You can obviously tell, like, the guy that runs the group, Powers Booth, is very smart. You can tell that Michael Bihn's character, Johnny Ringo, is also extremely smart, and probably the most evil out of all of them. And they're as you watch the scene with Billy Zane's character when they come and they do the whole thing in the theater. That's such a interesting scene to me, because you've got all these people, and you can see that the townspeople there too are close with this gang, to the point of them having these philosophical conversations with them and everything. But like,
yep,
they are evil, and they will do that's their downfall, is that they will do whatever they want whenever they want to do it, because nobody was stopping them and putting them in their place for so long. Enter Wyatt Earp and his brothers.
That's right.
So Tombstone is one of, if not my most favorite modern Western. I love so many things about this movie. I mean, Kurt Russell's one of my favorite actors, and I think he's done so many Westerns. He did this. He did The Hateful Eight. He did Bone Tomahawk. There's more out there, but those are like the most recent great ones that he's done. And you've got Sam Elliott, who's done a massive amount of Westerns.
Icon.
Yeah. So tell me, what did you think of the movie?
I loved it. And honestly, I can't believe that I'd never seen it before. I wonder if my mother kept me from watching it, because my parents aren't conservative, by any means. Like, they let us watch pretty much whatever we wanted to watch. But I do wonder if she stopped my sister and I from watching Tombstone because there was the rape in the first 10 minutes.
I do not remember there being a rape in the first 10 minutes.
it's implied. You know, it's not like it's
It's
graphic or
implied. It's not explicit.
yeah. But I
Actually,
wonder when we were, little girls riding our horses at 10 years old, and we wanted to watch every Western movie under the sun. She did limit us, which is why actually I didn't watch a lot of the Clint Eastwood movies or even John Wayne for a long time. Like I was a young adult by the time I started really watching a lot of these
yeah.
because I think my parents were making sure that I like wasn't watching anything prematurely, the true violence and like sexist and racist nature
I mean, this movie
of
can
Western
be,
movies.
as far as like westerns go, it's one of the most well made. Um, but on the same token, it's also very brutal at
Mm-hmm.
scenes. There's a lot of blood in the movie. There's a lot of violence, and there's a lot of scenes that really do. I mean, the fact that like even that opening scene, the fact that it's a wedding
Mm-hmm.
and they just killed the groom, and so many people died throughout this movie, so many, and yeah, it can be very brutal at parts. I saw that movie for the first time as a kid on Christmas Day. I went over to my cousin's house and they
No.
were watching it. And so we used to go over to my cousin's house every year. And I remember I went over there and they were watching Tombstone. And I very vividly remember that. Another one that they watched when I went over there on Christmas Day once was the first time I ever saw Braveheart.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh! Wow.
yeah.
I
I'm
will
telling you, I was a
say,
kid at the time.
I had watched. There was one Christmas where a family friend came over to the house and really wanted to watch Law Abiding Citizen, and it was Christmas Eve, and I kept telling my family no, like
Yeah,
you do not want to watch this movie on Christmas Eve day,
yeah.
please. I know what I'm talking about. I'm the only one in this house that's seen this movie. They would not listen to a single word I said. So what did we do? We sat down and watched Law Abiding Citizen on
There's
Christmas
nothing
Eve day.
Christmas about that movie either,
No,
right?
no.
Like, there's no
Within the
Christmas
first
scenes, right?
3.5 seconds, the wife and daughter are brutally raped and murdered before
Whole
Gerard
family.
Butler's eyes.
Yeah.
And he's knocked out, and then he wakes up and starts, committing crimes against the rapists of his wife and daughter. Uh, and starts getting his revenge
Yeah.
because he was a law-abiding citizen.
I'm just gonna say I didn't really like that movie. I don't think that's a good movie either.
No. Well, and truly, it didn't, when he gets blown up in his prison cell, it's like, well, I would have actually liked it better if he had lived and just, like, went and lived his life and forgot all about, this traumatic life event that he's been through. And he avenged and got revenge on his loved ones. And now he needs to put it all behind him.
Well, I think that's the problem with that movie is there's not really a good guy. You go into it thinking Gerard Butler's the good guy and he's the bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
and you go into it thinking uh, Jamie Foxx is the bad guy, and he is for like most of the movie. But then that he's like the hero at the end, and you're like, no, he was not a good guy either. Like, because
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, like it's his fault that these guys didn't go to jail.
Yeah.
Because he was
And
trying to put his career before ahead of like it or something. I don't know. I
yeah.
remember. I don't
Yeah.
know. But
When Gerard Butler kills Jamie Foxx's character's like love interest at the police department, the pretty blonde, he blows her up in her car. That was the turning point. So like if he hadn't done that,
yeah,
Gerard Butler would have been the good guy. But he went and did that, and now he's the bad guy because now he's no better than the people who raped and murdered his loved ones.
yeah,
So that's like the turning point. And it's like, oh, he's let it go.
yeah.
It like honestly, it's like good for you. Go get your revenge. I'm all about it. Like if like honestly, if somebody did that to my family, oh, 100%.
Not only is
Like
that the
I
turning
would be,
point for his
I would
character,
be, and I do wear that as a badge of honor. Like if someone like raped and murdered my whole family, or brutally killed like my loved ones, I guarantee it, no way am I living like on this side of the law. Absolutely not. Like I'm going like full Rambo on these people.
So I think that is not only just a turning point for Gerard Butler's character; it's a turning point for that movie. I think that's probably the moment where the movie stops being good too.
Yeah. It's like, why did they have to write that in? They should have just let him. I don't know.
Yeah, because it's not like they build
There were
towards
other
that
options
either.
there.
Yeah, I don't know, not a good movie. If you want to see a good revenge tale, Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon, that's the one to watch. Okay, so back to
horses and
Tombstone.
Tombstone.
Val Kilmer, what's your thoughts on his Doc Holliday character?
So I think that was so well acted. He's so fascinating in how he interacts with the other characters, and he is equal parts. He plays it in a sad way because, of course, he's succumbing to tuberculosis and he's dying.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he does, he's so evil, but it's almost like he's insane. Like he has mental health problems.
Yeah.
Like it's not even that he of course he's evil, but he's evil because he is clearly a man who has had no one tell him no in his whole life. Like there's been no discipline there at all. And he's just like living on the edge and taking everybody that's close to him down with him because he knows that he's dying, and he's like, why not? Let's just see what life has to bring me, and I'm going to be the most evil POS on the planet Earth.
I didn't think he was that evil.
I mean, I think he is, because if you can sit and like murder people and like allow women to be raped and stuff like that, to me is innately evil.
Doc Holliday?
Are we talking about the same person?
I don't think so.
The handlebar mustache guy.
So Doc Holliday, Val Kilmer, he's the one that's friends with Wyatt Earp, that is gambling the whole time and is sick the whole movie.
Of tuberculosis?
Yeah.
He's in that first scene though.
No, he's not. That's Johnny Ringo.
Oh no.
I think you might have just melded together Johnny Ringo and Doc Holliday into one character. They kill each other at the end. Remember at the tree?
Oh yeah, okay. But I thought for sure he was at that table eating, and he's like standing there all pompous, like at the wedding.
No, I'm pretty sure that's Johnny Ringo.
I watched it last night. I'm pretty sure he was there.
He's not part of the gang, though.
Yeah, well, he's so if we're talking about I don't know the name of the actor. That's why Val Kilmer is like.
You don't know who Val Kilmer is?
Mm-mm.
Oh my god.
No,
he was Batman.
Once. Oh really? Oh my gosh.
In Batman Forever, he was also.
But so they're the two guys that do like the gun
with the twirling cups,
and then the twirling.
He's the one that twirls the cup.
Got it. Okay, and he's like hammered, drunk.
Yeah, he's hammered the whole movie or sick.
Yeah.
And gambling with his girlfriend the whole time.
Okay, and you're asking me if I think he's evil.
Well, you were saying you thought he was evil.
Well, yeah, because I thought he was at that table.
No.
He does kill quite a few people.
Yeah, but he kills all the bad guys.
And he's really good friends with Wyatt and his two brothers.
He is.
Okay. Edit this all out, please. Well, because here's the thing. They all have handlebar mustaches.
There is a whole lot of handlebar mustaches.
Oh my gosh. Why? So what do you think my opinion of him should be?
Oh, well, so I'm just going to say that I think that Val Kilmer's performance in this movie is Oscar worthy. I think it's his number one performance, and besides Wyatt Earp, he's probably my favorite character in the movie. In fact, he's my favorite character in the movie. I'm just going to leave it at that. He's 100% my favorite character in the movie because his character is dying the whole time, and he's basically, who know, like him and Wyatt Earp obviously have a history, but you don't know exactly what that is. You don't know how far it went. Wyatt Earp was obviously a lawman, and Doc Holliday, as we know from history, was on the other side of the law, but it seems like they had a good relationship about the whole thing. So it's interesting. He seems like he's just at the end of his life now. He's going to spend the rest of his days gambling and drinking with his girlfriend, traveling the West. And that's what he's going to do, drink. And, every once in a while, somebody gets in a scuffle with him because they're like, oh, here's this famous guy. He's also very obviously got tuberculosis. I'm going to get a name for myself by killing Doc Holliday. But despite all that, his character is still the fastest person in the room 10 out of 10 times and kills every one of those people that tries to make that name for themselves.
Yeah.
So I think his character is acted extremely well. I think it's a very complex character, and it's my favorite character in the movie.
Mm-hmm. And you see that quick wit and quick, draw.
Yeah.
When they win at the gambling table and he kills, shoots the guy, stabs the guy, and then the girlfriend takes all the money and they walk out bandits with the cup. She drops the cup in there too, or he drops the cup in there too, and then she takes the bag and they ride off.
Yeah. I'm your Huckleberry.
Yep. Let's grab the money and go.
Yeah.
But he's so gifted at cards. You wonder, was he cheating? And does he cheat?
I don't know if you peeped it either, but Billy Bob Thornton is the guy that Kurt Russell kicks out of the one bar. He's got a lot of weight on him in this movie. He's overweight in this movie, because it was when he was way younger.
The original gentleman that's kicked out of the saloon. Who's like the big baby?
Yeah, the big baby
and
man.
Makes his nose bleed.
Yeah, and he shows back up with like a sawed off, and then Doc Holliday comes in and stops him from shooting Wyatt Earp in the back.
Yep, and then Wyatt's like, drop the gun on the ground and just leave. Bye. And then the guy says, thank you.
Yeah. And my favorite part's when...
As in, thank you for not killing me for this.
He's just, standing to the side while Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp are talking the whole time. And then, finally he turns to him and he's like, you're still here?
Why have you not left yet?
Oh, yep. I'm sorry. You can go now. I love that. I want to watch that movie right now. So, yeah. That is probably my favorite Western. I could watch that movie anytime somebody wants to put it on. I will watch it anytime that anyone puts it on, and I might put it on tonight. My other ones are True Grit, Haley Steinfeld, Jeff Bridges, Barry Pepper, guy that plays Thanos. Why can I not think of his name? Josh Brolin. Great cast. I think Haley Steinfeld, she won some awards for that. I think she might have won an Oscar for it.
Yes, I believe she did. And that was, I think it was her first movie ever.
It was.
And I love her music. I think she's a fantastic singer. And I've loved watching her career. Even in, when she's in Pitch Perfect and stuff, I just think she's great.
I've never seen any of the Pitch Perfect movies. But I have seen Hawkeye, and she's good in that.
Yes.
She's good in Bumblebee,
different
too.
Genre.
Have you seen Bumblebee? Her and John Cena?
Yes, yeah. I love that, too.
Yeah, nice little rejuvenation of the Transformers franchise. That should get a sequel.
Yep, I really enjoyed that.
3:10 to Yuma. It's great. So Christian Bale's in it. I think Christian Bale is one of my favorite actors. Everybody that's in it's doing great, though. The guy, the bad guy with the red beard, Ben Foster. He's so good in that role. And I think the last 20 minutes of this movie are so thrilling. It's literally as they're running through the town shooting at each other, and he's just got to get them to the train. That 20-minute scene is unbelievably good, and I think that's what really makes the movie.
Absolutely. Have you ever watched Cowboys and Aliens?
I have.
What do you think of it?
I don't think it's very good, but it's entertaining.
Yep. It's like like Transformers or Alien meets Daniel Craig, James Bond, but put him in a Western.
I'll tell you.
A lot's going on in that movie.
So much is going on. And so I was very excited about it because you got Harrison Ford, you got Daniel Craig, you got Walton Goggins in it, and Walton Goggins is one of my favorite actors too. And I don't think it quite meets the standard that having the three of those actors in a movie together should be. But
Yeah.
I've also only watched it once. But yeah, I remember being pretty disappointed in it. But it's entertaining, I guess. But the more I think about it, the more I don't think I like that movie.
No, it was a flop.
Yeah,
But it could have been great.
it could have been. And they, you know what? You know, everybody's always remaking movies. Remake that movie. You know, with the same cast. Just try again.
Yep.
This time, just do a little bit better. Throw Jeff Bridges in there too. And it's cool because I think that you know, I think we need more westerns. I think that some of these stories are being told in a very interesting way, where now more than ever, you have the ability to tell stories where you can have more complex characters because we know so much more now. I've also, and I've said this so many times on my podcast, we need some horror westerns. That's what I need in my life. I need a horror western. The only good one I can think of is Bone Tomahawk. But I would love a western that was like hunting monsters in the West. You know, like let's like imagine Walking Dead in the West.
Wow.
Or like vampires, or you know, hunting like mythological creatures. Like but done in a way where it's not like fantastical, like Jonah Hex or something like that. Because Jonah Hex is a bad movie. There's nothing redeeming about that movie. Have you seen that?
No.
It sucks. It's Josh Brolin, Michael Fassbender, and Megan Fox, and it's a very bad movie. It's one of the most poorly made movies I've ever seen. It's terrible. Watch the trailer for it, and you'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's gonna be bad."
Yeah. Oh, just kidding. No, thanks.
It's based off a comic book too, I believe. No, I don't believe it. Definitely is.
Yeah, I do like the idea of like werewolves in the West. Like packs of werewolves, but make them indigenous. Like ancient indigenous werewolf clans in the West. And, you know, you could set it in modern times, but you could also go historical with it and make them, you know, live up in the mountains and have whole communities, and maybe those are the communities that survive, and then you could fast forward to the future, and I don't know, maybe it would give us some, you know, a little bit of fantasy with our western.
Yeah, and you've got so much, like you've got like there's so many ideas you can have, like witches, undead, Wendigos. You could even like literally have episodes where it's just like bears or something, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but like you know, like just more horror in the West. I think it's a genre that's being completely neglected right now. You know. I mean, they've made video games off of it, so they've got what's that new game that's been doing pretty well. It's not new.
I don't know. I don't actually play video games. Feel bad even admitting it, but
it's okay. Red Dead Redemption has an Undead Nightmare version where you're traveling the West killing zombies, and it's super fun. There was just a Kickstarter campaign that I was a part of for this game called Zombicide that made literally millions of dollars off a board game, and it's called Undead or Alive, and that's all about hunting zombies in the West. Like so there's opportunity there for like that part of the genre to come in. But I digress because I've said all this before.
Wow, cool. Yeah, I love that. I love zombie movies. I used to be a huge Walking Dead fan, and now I know it's based on comic books, which I have not read. But the moment that the tiger was introduced, and I forget I got pretty far in the seasons, but the moment the tiger came out, I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's too far fetched, even for me. And it's a TV show about zombies. So yeah, no, I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's getting too stupid.
That's pretty close to the turning point that for most people, like season like 7, I think. I want to say I watched up to 8, but I only watched them the last, I think, 7 and 8, because like I was bored on Netflix and like caught them like years later. But like only the first 6 seasons are good, and there are definitely some filler episodes even in those seasons. But like yeah, that show just like eventually it just stopped being good. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
somehow it like limped along for another bunch of seasons, and then a bunch of spin-off shows too. But
Yep. I've always said too with Walking Dead, all of the zombies up north where I'm from would freeze.
you would
So
think,
in the winter, I don't think we'd have as much of an issue with zombies as like where they're filming it near Atlanta, Georgia
well, and that's
is.
interesting. So winter was a big part of the comics, and it wasn't really a big part of the earlier shows. Um, but that was a whole storyline in the comics. So, are there any other good westerns that you've seen lately?
I wouldn't say lately. Um,
Did you see The Harder They Fall on Netflix?
mm-mm.
Very good. It's I think Jonathan Majors is the star of it. Lakeith Stanfield is in it. Idris Elba is the bad guy.
Oh, no kidding. I like him.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it.
Honestly, the best Western I've seen in years was Tombstone last night. I'm gonna have to rewatch it now that I have heard you talk about it. But I
Tombstone's so good.
the cinematography and the choice of filming in the theater and all that symbolizes is pretty fascinating.
Yeah,
It's not just like your regular western. They put some thought and energy into what they wanted to portray in that one.
yeah,
It wasn't just like guns shooting and people dropping to the ground and horses running and stampedes happening. It was more, which was exciting.
yeah,
And I do love that it's based on real people instead of just, another story.
yeah. So thank you so much for joining me for the episode today. I really appreciate it. A lot of good topics covered. I hope everybody else enjoyed the episode just as much as we did.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I hope I explained all of my horse terminology and horse history and love of film in the best way possible for an audience that has probably never even sat on top of a horse before. So
I haven't. Yeah, so thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on.
awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it too. This was fun.